G'day.
Boom. Jaden, how are you, sir?
Yeah, good man. How are you?
Very, very well. So after Christmas, hitting the new year with our first Mic Me Up episode.
Yes.
How cool is that?
Yeah. 2021, and we have a awesome architect in the building.
We do. The none other, Nathan Stroud from Granny & Co. Homes.
Hey guys, thanks for the intro. I feel like breakdancing.
Breakdancing.
Intro, that was great.
Oh, brilliant. No,
Look, thanks very much for being here. Like it's excellent to talk to different businesses in different fields, isn't it, Jaden?
yeah, like it's just such like I have no experience in the architect manual labor, field, but it's so cool hearing about all kinds of spaces and industries and stuff. So
that's right.
It's just brilliant.
So you've been around the traps, Nathan. You've done quite a few things before you got to Granny & Co. Homes.
Yeah, it depends who you ask.
Okay. All right. Well,
and the audience.
all right. We'll keep it G-rated for this one, possibly.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about, how your journey, it started and how you got passionate about the design and the creativity about, designing properties.
Yeah, well, here we are today. I'm an architect running a construction company. I've always had a little bit of that in my blood with a family business. Dad was a builder. But never thought that I'd be in a building business. I thought it would be more design based.
So
right.
we were talking, and you around the start of your career path, you were over in Taiwan, doing all sorts of stuff.
Tell us a bit about that.
I had a bit of a sea change. Studying architecture, it's a bit of a hard slog, and you're dedicated for 6 years without a social life. So shortly after that finished, I decided I needed to take a bit of a break. And the intention was to go to Europe via Taiwan, where I'd catch up with a friend. I loved Taiwan and ended up staying for 5 years. So while I was there, learned some Chinese, learned enough to get in and out of trouble. The latter bit's the important bit. Forgot most of it, but had a great time. And while I was there, you have to be flexible when you're an expat living overseas. So I did some design work, I did some marketing work, I did some teaching work, but had a great lifestyle there and came back, with a great enriched cultural understanding, I guess is the word. And came back in 2004-05. At that time, we had some stuff going down in the family that made me come back to catch up with family members. And during that time, sat down with my dad, and Dad was running a building business at the time, and we decided to start working together. So that started the pathway into construction rather than just design, and things have slowly progressed.
So what are some of the design elements that you learnt then over in Taiwan that translated into the business back here in Australia?
Well, good question. Firstly, everything's small, short and small. So learning how to keep it all efficient. Most people there are living in apartments, so it's unusual to have a house. But if we translate that to the work that we're doing here, we're small home solutions. So we try and squeeze as much as we can into the space that we've got, and keeping it reasonable and functional. But it's about efficiency.
So you design nice, efficient spaces now that can be added to current properties, whether it's a granny flat or you're expanding or adding another level to a home. So it's that creative design that really makes those properties stand out.
They have to look inviting, or you're wasting your time. So at the end of the day, it needs to be a good-looking extension, good-looking home, good-looking granny flat, or it's going to detract from the value of the property. So, keeping it inviting, keeping it modern, and keeping the quality high are three good rules or rules of thumb to follow.
Right. So that's your family business. You did a lot of that design work, correct?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So how did you overcome then, obviously adapting, what you learnt over in Taiwan to, Australian living? Like that would have been a challenge in itself, different climates and that type of thing would play a big part in that design, would it not?
Yeah, of course. I think as an architect, you've got a handle on a holistic design approach. Really, these days, though, everything comes down to the budget, the dollars. The industry is largely dictated by builders who have a set budget to work with, or clients who have a limited, bank account or bank balance to fund the project. So to answer the question, I think these days everything's dictated by cost rather than, going in there with a grand design. We tend to have the first constraint of a budget, and we try to work with the budget to make it as grand as possible within reason.
Okay, so what's some of the challenges then? You're designing these beautiful solutions for people. Local councils, there are some councils out there that have got limits on construction size and that type of thing. So obviously you're constrained as well by that. So what are some of the challenges that you overcome to help your clients, help improve their lifestyle at home?
A good example is in New South Wales, they have the Affordable Housing Act, or the SEP it's called, and they're encouraging granny flats to be built because it increases the urban density, and it means that you're not getting the urban sprawl that we have, say, in Brisbane. However, the one of the restricting rules is that granny flats there can only be 60 square metres. In Brisbane, we're at 80 square metres. That's a huge difference. That's an extra bedroom or a bigger living room. So a way around that was to encourage clients, if they had the right block of land, to do what we call a dual occupancy. We might still be designing and building that same granny flat, 60 square metres, but with the rules that we're working with, we can extend that granny flat, put another floor on it, or build another room out and make the granny flat bigger than a granny flat, make it a home. So I did that in northern New South Wales, went down and saw the job recently. You went to photograph
that
it.
place was just beautiful. That house, and even the spot was just great.
Yeah, so that was an example of a granny flat that was actually approved as a dual occupancy. So the client, firstly, it improves the value of the property because you've actually got what you refer to as a house rather than a secondary dwelling or a granny flat on the property. So you have two homes there. And I think that's one way or one approach to try to optimise the value of the property. Another one is, sometimes a granny flat's not the right solution. Sometimes we can achieve a better result by building upstairs or raising the house, and you keep the backyard. So, if it's a young family with kids and they want the yard space, well, maybe chewing up that yard space with another building is not the right approach. So building up is an effective way to do it. So these are ways to optimise the site to try and improve the value of the property. And then in terms of a design approach, you're trying to get something that works for the client that after they've moved in, they go, oh, wow, okay, he thought of that. That's a really good, solution or a nice detail. And underlining or underpinning all of this is the budget. So it might not be a big budget to create a grand design, but you're trying to squeeze whatever details or whatever practical things you can into that building.
Wow, that's really, really cool.
That's cool.
I don't think a lot of people take that into account, do they? Like, their mum and dad live in their own little house. They're looking at downsizing, so they just keep downsizing, and then the other family is upsizing essentially. And this is kind of almost like a merging of the two.
Yeah, middle ground.
Yeah.
The good test is when you do a design for a client. It might just be a granny flat, and it's meant for the kids. You're halfway through construction, and the parents look at it and go, oh, okay, I think we might actually move into it. And so they move out of the house and downsize into the granny flat quite readily, and they give the kids the home. So that's actually a really common outcome. And,
right.
And I think that's a good test as to a benchmark for success. If the owners are going to move into it themselves and they hadn't intended to from the outset.
Wow. So after talking to you for a little while, Nathan, your I guess problem solving is awesome. You're very level-headed.
Yeah.
You have a very
navigate a map. Google Maps.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. So you can talk with clients. Obviously this is the design part. Within your family business that you've done. But what does Nathan do to keep that level head and be able to present these solutions to people? Because you seem like a very down to earth,
very wholesome.
Yeah, very wholesome person. So what do you do in your spare time to keep the mind creative and grounded?
These days, I think you have to have it helps if you have a holistic approach, if you actually live the lifestyle that you're working. So recently I've been studying some building biology, which is the science behind a healthy home. So things to do with mold, for example, it's the new asbestos in the building industry, which doctors are starting to become a bit more savvy about. So I don't know if any of you had, or if you know anyone who's had a mold illness.
Yep.
Very common, and people mistake it for something else. Oh, you've got a flu, or you've got a flu 6 months later. It's still the flu.
That's right.
It might be mold related. So we're still coming up to speed with things like how to work with mold when you see it in a home, or electromagnetic fields, which we've got all the 5G towers popping up, and what are going to be the health consequences of those. So I have a natural interest in that. Living in Byron helped me have a bit more of a holistic approach, and then I've brought that back up to Brisbane. So I think, I'm reasonably grounded in that sense. I love, I'm a foodie, so I love to cook and cook from raw ingredients. And then in terms of, hobbies, well, I mentioned before I'm a dive master, so love the water. The water therapy is great. So whenever I can, I'm down to Byron Bay, or I used to be, my last trip. I actually came back from a dive trip in Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
And came back the day before the lockdown happened in March.
Oh, you're joking.
Didn't know anything. It was like we're 2 weeks.
Just in time. Close the gates.
Seriously, and coming through customs, and I didn't know what had gone on, and the customs officer put a hand out for a ticket or something, and I went to shake her hand, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by 6 customs guys. Oh, we don't touch. And it's like, shit, what's going on here now?
Oh, yeah. Like, imagine that you've just been in like in some other place,
you're chilling out, you're coming back so peaceful, the world is good, and it's like, what's happened?
Like this apocalypse of like pandemic. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, I've heard that from a few people. Water, all sort of different water therapies are actually a really good anxiety. Good for anxiety and stress relief.
Well, I had a float last week. Have you guys tried that? A flotation.
I've always wanted to try that. Like, is that like in the little the
tanks?
Tank?
Pod,
yeah. What's it like? Because I heard it's like at some point in time you sort of just feel like you're just floating in space or something.
You are, yeah. It's not for everyone. Some people, if you feel claustrophobic in small spaces, then it might not be your thing. But it's a great way to unwind. I had a few muscle injuries at that time and just dropped in, and it's just a great way to recover. So the water there's 500 kilos of salt in this bathtub, basically.
Oh, right.
And it's Epsom salt, so it's supposed to be healthy for your skin. You can't sink in it.
Float.
Yeah, you're floating. And then they heat it up to your body temperature, so about 36.1. So it's provided you're not doing strenuous exercise, you don't really notice it.
You can't feel it, apparently.
So I've always thought, like, what happens when you're floating and then, like, you touch the side? Like, does that, like...
freak you out?
Completely just disrupt the space travel? Or?
Well, for big guys like me, you can't help it. You're always bumping into things. So you try and lay still and not touch anything, and that just helps you relax a bit. But that's one of the few annoying things about it. If you're floating and you start to move and you bump your head on the side, it might wake you up. But most people fall asleep in about 15 minutes, and you might have half an hour of sleep, and it feels like you've just had maybe 4 hours of sleep. So you come out pretty relaxed.
Oh, we have to try it.
There's one up the road, you know that?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, definitely do it. It's great. Good way to unwind.
You go staff outing.
That's awesome.
We're off to a float.
So
we'll come back so chilled.
Yeah. Well, in saying that, let's go to a break.
Yep.
And we'll talk more about your brand new business, Granny & Co. Homes.
Excellent.
Yep. So we'll get into that and learn about a little bit about the experience that drives that business. And
let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. And welcome to the break. We have an official sponsor, Jaden. Who is that?
Social Cafe, and they have an amazing business model, don't they, Paul?
Absolutely. Basically, Social Cafe source all their beans overseas. It's all socially sourced and responsibly sourced, and they're trained for quality assurance. So when you jump onto socialcafe.site, you're actually ordering and supporting the local roasters as well, because their beans go to a local roaster, so it ensures the freshness and the quality delivered to your door sooner than what you can get anywhere else.
But there's a twist. Hey,
There is a twist.
5% of your order actually goes to the local Rotary Club of your area, doesn't it?
It does. Isn't that amazing?
That's
so they're
so
supporting farms overseas, the quality and freshness is ensured. It then gets shipped to local roasters to help support their business. You get fresh cup of coffee, which tastes bloody awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're supporting the local Rotary Club.
So if you want to feel great about your morning coffee every day, go visit socialcafe.site. Bloody good coffee too.
Awesome coffee. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So we're back here with Nathan Stroud from Granny Co and Homes. So we had a great chat just before the break, a little bit about yourself as a person and where you've come from and whereabouts you're going. So you obviously, just before the break, we were talking a little bit about design and the role that you played in the family business. So you've now transitioned into a new business of your own. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Last year with the COVID reset seemed like a good time to start up a new business. So we've done that with a few people who I can trust. So the main one is my builder, Troy. So we're essentially a partnership doing a design and build service, which we handle a job or a project from start to finish. One of the key selling points of what we do is being an architect. I care about the end result, the design, the way it looks and functions. So we customize each design to suit each client. So you're getting an architectural solution built to a high standard.
That's awesome. And you're bringing to the table, you said to us, almost 25 years of architectural experience. That's a lot of experience, a lot of know-how and what to do and what not to do in the industry.
It sounds like a lot more than it really is. But yeah, I'm not sure about the 25, but if you look at the calendar, it's been that. There's certainly, I've still got a lot more to learn.
Yep.
Tons to learn, tons to design. But every job's a little bit of a challenge. And the product that we're doing is slowly evolving and maturing.
So you've gone from, like I said, playing a big part in the design. Now you've got the full solution from beginning to end. Let us know a little bit about how you're solving people's problems using this new business now.
Oh, I have to think about that. Can you?
So a client, you're bumping into clients every day and they're saying, Nathan, this is what I want to do. What can we do? Sort of, you seem to be a very sort of genuine. You'll be quite open and upfront with people with what can and can't be done.
Yeah.
It's not about just building anything and just shoving them in there. I mean, you spoke a lot about, that holistic approach to creating design and making people feel comfortable in their own home. So just walk us through some of the steps on how, let's say I was in the market for one, how would, what would that look like to one of your clients?
Okay. Well, first up, I'd come and have a look at your property and talk about, let you talk about what you're trying to achieve, tell you if that's a dream or realistic. And while we're talking, I'm trying to weigh up whether you're overcapitalizing on the property. I'm not interested in taking on a project where I take advantage of a client because they've overcapitalized without knowing. So I'm very upfront about that aspect of putting your money into the site. So really it's a discussion of needs. I try and take it on board what you're trying to achieve, what you want. And then I start to tailor a solution that suits you, suits the site. We want to look at the orientation so that you've got good natural light, cross ventilation, you've got a healthy home. And then we look at your budget and then balance that up with, there's all sorts of development constraints or council requirements. You might be in a rural area that has a bushfire hazard, that's quite common out here in the Moreton Council area. So we then have to, I'm not sure what the word is, we start to create a more refined, specialised solution as the design develops.
Wow, so you're really just consulting people as opposed to just going, yep, here you go, plonk this on a block of land, I'm happy to take your money. You're really consulting them and guiding them through that whole process by the sounds. Yeah,
I care about the end result.
Yeah.
And as an architect, I care that the client needs to have a design that works for them. Otherwise, what's the point? So having that care factor and running a building company, it's an interesting combination because my criticism of a lot of builders out there is that it's all profit driven and they don't care about the end result. They don't care about the design, or they don't care about the environmental impact, or they don't care about the impact on the neighbours or the vegetation of the area or things like that. No, I care about these things, and the end result is what matters. So So far, we've been pretty lucky in that we've been getting relying on word of mouth referrals to turn the business over. So that's always a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't yet have the website up. We're not yet advertising, but we've been going for about 9 months. So
wow, that's pretty good,
that's
isn't
brilliant.
it?
Yeah.
That speaks a lot about the person than you are. You know, you seem to be the type of person that wants to rubber stamp the project and be proud of it and go, yep, I've achieved what I've had to achieve.
Otherwise, why do it?
Yep.
Exactly. Do you, we were talking earlier, and I have to agree, there's places out there which don't let you customize the floor plan to how it suits me. Like it's either that one, this one, or that one. Whereas you bring that more of the client, like
a bespoke almost.
Yeah, like a bespoke approach. So why do you do that? Like, why not just have the pick your poison and then I'll just build it and slap it on there?
Because I can't stand that sort of end result of a builder's solution that's been plonked on the site. That sometimes you need to do that. I haven't, but other builders do, I guess, for profit or to keep the cost down for the client. But at the end of the day, you're not doing anyone a service by providing a building that doesn't really suit their needs. So again, I care about the end result. So that's the process that we have. It's a considered, thought out process from start to finish.
It'll be a bit of a sort of a surreal thing, though. I mean, you're sitting there, you're designing, a property. In some instances, it's almost an end of life decision for some people. And you want them to feel comfortable and appreciate what they've just purchased. Potentially with the last of their retirement funds and that type of thing. So there's a bit of pressure, isn't it, on making or seeing that come through. Like you seem to be really genuine in just wanting to make those people and their families, the sons and daughters that are helping make that investment come true. Everyone is like, oh, good, we've done it. We've achieved what we've done. And that's obviously resulting in some great referral because you're doing that for these people. Yeah,
thank you for that. It's interesting because clients tend to be very conservative with their approach. They may not build too many new houses in their lifetime. I'm dealing with one client out at Sanford at the moment, and it's been an interesting journey with her because the selections that she's making, the colours, the materials, the kitchen, the first time around, fantastic. I love it.
Wow.
I love it. But then she starts to doubt herself. It's like, oh, maybe these colours are a little strong, or maybe the kitchen design is going to be a little dark, and it starts to get a little bit watered down from there. So that's been interesting because I'm trying to reinforce with that client, no, you've made a great decision. It's fantastic. So that's always a battle, trying to remind clients that they can take, it's not really a risk, it's a guided solution to choose the features that they like, and I'll guide you through that process.
That's the honest truth. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit then about you're designing these properties and you're delivering these solutions. Like, what type of styles do people have access to? Is it almost unlimited what they can do, or are there some? Like, tell me a bit about what I could plonk on my backyard for my mum and dad.
Good question. There's a practical solution, and then you've got everything else.
Yep.
I'm looking as a hobby, looking at some cheaper, newer building methods, which it'll take a little bit of a battle with council or a bit of work with the certified to actually get this to happen. But it's out of an interest in trying to find a new material or a new way of doing things that is cheap and it works. Come back to the question.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you're sitting down designing this granny flat. You're obviously innovating some new ideas there and trying to create some things. So I mean, could I put like a Queenslander style home on there? Could I just make it my own? Like,
absolutely.
Could I do? Yeah,
absolutely. If we talk granny flats, 15 years ago, there was a real stigma in Queensland with respect to granny flats. My understanding is maybe 25 years ago, to get a granny flat built, you needed a doctor's certificate, which is crazy. Yep, doctor's certificate, and the granny flat was for family use.
Oh, for your mum with health problems and
there
things.
You go. Yeah,
that's where the name came from. It was for granny.
So
there you go.
That I can't verify it, but that's the urban legend. These days, people are a little more brave with respect to how the granny flat's going to look. when we started doing granny flats. So I started designing grannies just before the GFC hit. Felt that the market was going to change and people were going to be nesting, or families were going to come back to their family home, which is what has happened and what's happening now with COVID. So back then there was a little bit of pressure to make sure the granny flat or the house extension clearly blended in with the house, that it looked like a mini version, a mini-me. These days, though, because, there's a lot of other people doing granny flats as well, there's, a lot of social media publishing the tiny house movement.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so small.
So there's a
lot
lot
of stuff you can fit in there.
There's a lot of innovation out there. So to answer your question, honestly, it comes down to the client's personal preference. And again, it's a guided solution. If you come up with, you want an igloo or something like that in your backyard and you're thinking about resale value of your home, then we might have a little chat. So there's definitely a cost-effective way of building and there are practical design and building alternatives. So we tend to go down that pathway just because it's better value for money.
Yep.
Occasionally you get a client who just wants to go for it and says, I want a modern expression and I've got a higher budget, or I want to do something different. These days, I'm getting more clients who are interested in the health of their home. So things like less vinyl or a different type of vinyl which has lower chemical release. And so the building materials become a considered process because more people today have allergies, allergies to everything. So to answer your question, there are practical alternatives in terms of the design and then the way that we build. I have a range of standard designs. I just counted them. I've actually hit 20 standard designs that will go onto the website. I've probably got another 100 in the archives, because you're just tinkering with things.
Yeah.
And, so some of the directions we may move into in the future are prefab. So I've got a few designs that would definitely suit prefabrication, and I'm looking at maybe developing, or I'm in the process of developing a building material or a method that would suit the prefab so that we can look at it again as a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
So prefabs are one thing, or modular buildings. So that's one area, and then you go completely to the other spectrum of bespoke. And when you're dealing with retirees, the baby boomers who are cashed up, they know what they want, you tend to have a little more freedom with those clients, but they can also be the more conservative. So it's just a matter of explaining to them, hey, look, I know you've thought about things this way, but have you thought about it this way? And then trying to convince them of the merit.
I really liked what you said before. Like I've picked up on a couple of things, overcapitalization, and investment, some of the key words that you spoke about there, which most people wouldn't discuss with their client. So, you're talking about putting a fair bit of money into improving, your current home. You don't want that to be a burden on you later on if you were to resale. And the amount of granny flat homes that come on the market for resale are very, very far and few between, and they go like hotcakes because people need that solution. Whereas now people are building their own solution and inadvertently increasing the value of their home if they do it right. Would that be correct in saying that?
Yeah, totally correct.
Perfect. There you go. Boom.
That's cool.
Truth bomb.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Because you think about it, Jaden, you're building a home, or your parents have a home. They sell it, they put some cash in their pocket, and then they go and do this with their relatives. A lot of people will get an inheritance. When mum and dad pass away. This way, you've got that almost inheritance built into the family home. It's increased in value substantially more than what it would have normally.
Yeah.
And because there's such a short supply of granny flat homes on the market, like secondhand, people are just going, sign me up, I want that, because they need that solution. But a lot of people aren't thinking about this solution, are they?
No.
Where they can add something to their home and potentially make some money on that home at the same time. Yeah, it's quite an amazing...
I've never thought about it like that.
No.
Like I've thought about, like renovations, like the kitchen and the bathrooms and the this and that, but to like to add a whole other dwelling or an extension, like that seems in my mind like too far out of reach or too over the top, but it could be a whole other
I was about to say,
yeah.
what about you? You're living in a home with dual living, right?
I actually,
so you don't need to be you don't need to be a granny.
No,
He's one of those kids that just don't want to move out. Hey, Debbie,
I keep on coming back. Just ask my mum.
You need what's called a Fonzie flat. Did you ever hear of that TV show from was it 60s and 70s called The Happy Days?
Happy Days, yeah, I remember Happy Days.
The Fonz lived in granny flat above the garage. So Fonzie flat is just that, sort of Fonz.
That's cool.
So we've done granny flats, which are actually a second level extension, completely self-contained.
Independent, yeah.
Yep, so you need to fireproof between upstairs, downstairs.
Cool.
We'll call them granny flats because a granny flat's a self-contained area.
Yeah.
Right, a livable self-contained area. We've done granny flats which are actually an extension off the side of a house. So you're creating a duplex.
Yeah.
Usually it's in the same character as the home. Sometimes we've done a really modern extension which looks like chalk and cheese between the two. The great end result, improves the value of the property and is very functional. So you can have two families living in the one home or one structure, I guess you call it. We've done granny flats when we've raised a home and built underneath. We've done granny flats which turn out to be homes. We've done granny flats that we extend. We've done 2-story granny flats, anything sort of possible.
So that granny flat term, it's kind of not true in the sense of it's just for grannies, right?
No.
So I'll tell you a story. Like you haven't heard this one. We had some family that built a granny flat, right, for mum and dad. Yep. So they moved into the granny flat. They spent the rest of their years in that granny flat, and then they stayed in the home. And now they've transitioned it into a teenage retreat. So as the family's grown and the kids have grown up and become independent, got themselves a girlfriend, not ready to move out of home yet, that's served another purpose.
It's perfect.
20 years down the track. So it's not just for grannies; it can be for the kids that don't want to go anywhere.
Exactly.
But our granny flats, granny and co homes, not just for grannies. That's one of our taglines. The designs that we have are not the traditional, colloquial granny flat design. We've done granny flats for every purpose that you can think of. I did one granny flat. It was open plan, 100 square metre granny flat for where do I go with this? I think they were making gay porno movies. It was a studio.
Right. There you go, Ryan.
There we go.
The granny flat. So there you go, folks. It can be for anything.
No, that's interesting. But they come in all shapes and sizes, don't they? Like coming from someone my age, like that whole story, like I'm sort of half there right now is like for me to save up and buy a home, it costs a lot of money.
It does.
And for me to go out and rent a full home and have that independent feeling
and still save
is twice as much as what I could do by being able to have a flat at home and still have that independence, but you don't have the rent of what it like a full,
the big expense of going out on your own.
Exactly. So
it's exactly it.
It's a great sort of midway point without needing to go out. You can still have that at home if
so it kind of just goes back to just dual occupancy, really. Or I mean, could some of your designs be utilised as like a little pool house? Where it's like a bit of a,
like a portico almost. Like
you could adapt to many different things, couldn't it?
Totally, yeah. I've got a couple of designs which I do advertise.
The ultimate man cave.
Pool pavilions. Well, we looked at that.
Yeah,
we looked at granny flats for man caves, and maybe in the future I'll release a range of small pods. Like a one room structure.
Yeah.
I'll show you some pictures later on, but
ooh,
that sounds so.
It's warming up.
Look at it this way: you can get a garden shed in your backyard or front or backyard.
Yeah.
10 square metres, I think, about 3 by 3 metres. You can get that on your land without building approval. So what if that garden shed was pimped out as a little office, okay, and it looked good?
Yeah.
You don't need building approval. And if it looked good, it's good enough to put in the front yard or the backyard, and it's a freestanding structure. So
resale value.
No, resale value.
Well, you might take it with you when you sell the home. That's the thing. It's a freestanding
you could probably just
structure.
lift it up. Yeah.
Well, that's
a
another
bloody good
that's
idea,
another good
isn't it?
idea.
That's awesome.
You know, with COVID and a lot of people now, a lot of businesses have, downsized their office floor space. A lot of people are working from home. And, that would be an ideal solution for a nice private home office where you could fit it out with the air conditioning and make it, your own little space without, the kids and listening to the dinner being cooked and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You could almost have a little private space to have a meeting and things like that as well. So
That's right.
yeah, wow, look, there you go. So it's not just about granny flats, Jaden.
No, we build them for anything by the sound of it.
Anything.
Coming back to what you said before, Jaden, you're in that demographic which unfortunately they say won't be able to afford to buy their own home in the future just because the cost of housing has gone up so much.
Yeah.
But the idea of the granny flat, the land is there. The land is technically the land is free because it's already part of your home. So you're saving a massive amount by building in the backyard or front yard. And a great scenario for you might be if your parents lived on a big enough property, you might be able to subdivide in the future. Build the granny flat, the land's free, subdivide it, and sell one off to pay the other, or sell one off to own it outright yourself.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Yeah, little scenarios like that are clever.
Yeah.
There you go.
Brilliant. I didn't ever think about it.
He's full of ideas. He's not just an architect.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Nathan. This has been awesome.
It's been really good. Yeah, absolutely. So if you need a solution, whether it's a granny flat or a teenage flat or a man cave, porn studio, then Nathan's your man. So thanks so much for coming on and giving us all that insight into your business. And I wish you all the best and hope you kick some goals in 2021.
You're welcome, and likewise. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
no
very
problem,
much.
Nathan.